Hi, welcome to the DVD commentary of the Halpern Meltzer production of Dead Heat, written by Terry Black. My name is Mark Goldblatt, and I directed this picture, and I am joined here today by...
I'm Terry Black, the author of the movie. I've also written several Tales from the Crypt episodes on HBO, written for Dark Justice on CBS, Silk Stockings for USA, and 18 Wheels of Justice on TNN.
And the producers of the picture here today as well.
I'm Michael Meltzer, one of the producers.
David Halpern, the other producer.
So we're all here, and we're very excited to be together again because we haven't seen each other in one place for a long time. This is Dead Heat, and then I see Lindsay Frost's name right there, and Darren McGavin. We had a great cast in this picture, starring, of course, Treat Williams and Joe Piscopo.
Vincent Price.
Don't forget him.
I wouldn't forget Vincent. He was great, and working with him was unbelievable. It was a great honor for all of us. And I remember just getting into Vincent that, between takes we'd sit, and the stage that we were shooting part of the picture in turned out to be a stage that he had worked in many, many years prior for an RKO picture called His Kind of Woman, directed by John Farrow, and he was telling me all about where they shot some of the scenes as we were sitting waiting for lighting setups. So there's Terry's credit, and there's
Thank
Michael
you,
and
thank you.
David. By the way, just so you know, this aerial shot of Los Angeles is a stock shot because we couldn't afford a helicopter in this picture. This picture, by the way, had a budget of $5.4 million all in, which translates to $4.5 million below the line, which means that everything else, the other $900,000, was for the actors, the stars, etc. I think that's right, isn't it, gentlemen?
Yeah. Mark, did you get paid for directing this movie?
I did, but somehow over the course of time from when we tried to get this picture made till we finally got it out in the theaters, I lost money over that course
I
of
know all
time.
about that.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't read your profit statement then?
No, I didn't. Did I get one?
I want to mention one of the Roberts here is Peter Kent, who was the body double for Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's right.
He's like Predator.
Yeah, he's the first one in the door. That's Peter. And Peter...
And isn't Peter Kent running for governor?
Got to keep him straight. Peter's also, I haven't seen him in years, but he was a good friend of Arnold's. And in fact, I had edited a number of movies with Arnold, like The Terminator and Commando, and Peter was always involved in those pictures. And I remember once visiting the World Gym, I guess it was, or Gold's Gym, one of those gyms. I gave Peter a ride back after shooting late with him one night, and Arnold tried to get me to press some weights.
How'd you do?
Not too well. I felt kind of embarrassed to be there. This is an interesting scene. We shot this in Beverly Hills.
Right on Melrose.
Melrose Place.
Melrose Place. That's what
Melrose
it was.
Place.
As a matter of fact, Darren Star, creator of that series, was involved in the filming. I've always thought he may have named the series after his experience this morning filming that.
I never thought of that.
Think about it now.
Terry, remember you and Darren had a wonderful creative relationship during the making of the picture.
You know what? I wish I'd been nicer to him. If ever there was a person you want to suck up to, it was Darren.
Yeah, Darren, of course, came and, I don't know, what did he do? Some
He
touch-up
did some
work, I guess we'd
dialogue
say.
touch-up work.
Yeah.
Well, it's never too late to call and apologize.
Yeah, Darren, if you're listening, sorry about that.
There you go. Darren, but, say something about Darren Star. When he came on the picture, he read the script. He was hired to kind of punch it up. And he read the script and said, I don't know what they want me to do. The script seems fine. It seems great to me. So he really, in his initial interpretation, wasn't there to completely change
Right.
anything. So he did, do some dialogue touches and things like that.
They came up with one good line that we're coming up soon. It's when they look at the zombies and say, "You have the right to remain disgusting."
I like that line. I like this little, this is a great shot, by the way. This was our big crane shot. As the crane comes down, then... Well, I remember we had a Steadicam. There it is. Steadicam walked off the crane. I see that our editor, Harvey Rosenstock, cut that shot up, but that's okay. It probably took too long in a static position. So this is our first big action scene.
I want to point out Robert Picardo as Lieutenant Kohlberg, who went on to be in Star Trek Voyager, China Beach.
That's right. Bob Picardo's a really good guy, very professional.
He played every monster in the movie Explorers.
That's true. And I had worked with Bob well, I guess I did The Howling. I used to edit, and I still do. But before this picture, I was editing, and I met Bob on The Howling, and we hit it off. And it's great to get him in this picture.
He wanted to do celebrity impressions, but he was afraid he'd lose his fake mustache.
That's right. And he decided to go without a toupee. which I thought was a cool move. In fact, we have several actors in this movie who decided to go that route. Darren McGavin, who you'll see later.
Since Mark and I are both bald, we applaud the decision.
Yes. By the way, our stunt coordinator, Dan Bradley, who, obviously supervised the stunt work on this scene, went on to do Seabiscuit, Jackass the movie, Panic Room. Has actually had a very, very good career and a lot of second unit direction as well.
He was completely nuts.
He was nuts.
He said, and
But he
I
was
quote,
good.
he said, "I've never done anything dangerous. Although what was dangerous to him was not what was dangerous to me."
So anyway, you see what's happening in this scene. The zombies will not die. The zombie jewel thieves. In fact, the very concept of a zombie jewel thief is something that I hadn't heard before. So kudos
Thank you,
to
thank
Terry.
you.
So there's some cool twists here on the genre. Now, we have some of these shots here were done with a device called the Pogo Cam. And the Pogo Cam is like this large stick, metal stick. It looks like a broom, a metal broom, and the camera's mounted on it, and you can run around with it. It's kind of like a poor man's Steadicam. Now, Treat, I remember when he was driving, that in the wide shots, I think we have a stuntman here, but in the tight shots, it's Treat. And we had a camera mounted. So he drove pretty fast. He was pretty good. So here we had a handheld camera in the car. And I have to say, Treat Williams really took this part seriously. You know, you might think that a lot of actors, especially people who had done some very highly esteemed pictures, and if they're doing a zombie picture, they may kind of flow through it or something. But Treat was incredibly
Ew.
serious. Ouch, that hurt, by the way.
Oh, here comes the line.
You're under arrest. You have the right to remain disgusting. You sure that's
But getting back to Treat, Treat would phone me up in the middle of the night with ideas and things, and very, very serious, really worked out his character arc, and he's a real professional. This is Bob Picardo's big scene in the picture.
And he does a hell of a job.
He does. But, it's interesting to watch Joe Piscopo kind of just react.
Unauthorized use of a city vehicle. Reckless endangerment.
I don't know if we want to talk about this. This was the first day of shooting. We had
It was a tough day.
this was a tough day. Mel Stewart, who is the actor here, I don't know, there was a situation, but for some reason he just didn't know all of his lines. Now, he has a lot of lines here, and it's just all talk, all talk, all talk. But he could literally, and I can say this because it actually happened, he could only seem to get out one or two lines at a time before he would forget the next line, which does happen to actors sometimes. So what we would do is we would, do a setup and let him come out with as many lines as he could until he screwed it up, and then we'd do a pickup, and we would do that in the various angles we had. But the amazing thing is, through the good work of our editor, Harvey Rosenstock, it looks like the lines are just pouring out of him without a single moment's hesitation. So, interesting.
Yeah, I think you did a great job of describing that. I was trying to remember that day. It was a long day.
Oh, wait. We've got a Joe improv coming up right here.
call me Thursday.
That's it. Call me Thursday. This was a nice little setup. Again, this was a kind of a standing police station set somewhere, I think it was downtown L.A. Nicely, dressed up. Production designer Craig Stearns.
Want to mention Mrs. Field cookies while we're in here?
Yeah, this is where we got into
This
the
is
whole
the Mrs.
promotion
Fields
of that.
Cookies
That's right.
promotion.
Free Mrs. Fields cookies every day of the production in exchange for Piscopo holding up a Mrs. Fields cookie bag and eating from it.
Right. Oh, there's Martha Quinn, one of the very original VJs
Yeah,
from MTV.
Yeah.
And she was great. Very happy to do this picture. So now those were pretzels in the I think they were pretzels.
This was a time when Joe was just starting his bodybuilding, wasn't it?
Right. Joe was
Yeah,
very into
He
it.
had weights on the set. He worked out every day.
Yep. And I believe sometimes he would use something called mink oil just to accentuate the glow of the skin.
He decided he
Something like
wanted his wardrobe like that to emphasize his physique.
That's
we were
right.
discussing that.
that. Right. The T-shirt. In fact, that's the wardrobe he chose to play the character.
It was very inexpensive wardrobe, actually.
It was.
That's a good choice on his part. Helped the budget.
Yeah, but you have to now as you're watching the movie, check out the continuity of the sweat stains on his T-shirt because sometimes it changes. Nothing we could do about it.
Did you ever wonder about your death day, Roger?
Okay, now in the original cut, that body over there was on the screen a lot longer, and it was a lot more disgusting.
And these effects were done by Steve Johnson. who
Steve
did a really good
Johnson,
job.
yes, fantastic makeup effects and prosthetic effects, and he did an admirable job. All the monsters in this picture were created by him, and really, really well done. This is Claire Kirkconnell playing Rebecca Smithers, and I had actually seen Claire. I used to watch a TV series called The Paper Chase, which was based on the film, and she had a recurring role in the show, and I had always thought she was quite good in it. So that's one of the reasons we brought her in. And I must say, during the casting process, we had a pretty democratic team here, and we would all be together in the casting and discuss each actor and actress as they came in, the various pros and cons. And I remember when Claire actually got the job, we had callbacks on this part too. But we even got Treat involved because we thought that the chemistry between the two of them was important, and it would be interesting to see what he thought. And he went along with Claire as well. So I think we as soon as she did her reading in the callback and then left the room, after we talked about it, we went out and told her she had the part right on the spot.
Dr. McNabb, I am not in the habit of...
Darren McGavin,
Darren McGavin, the great Darren McGavin.
the Night Stalker.
Kolchak, and star of Riverboat and the original Mike Hammer TV series back in the 50s, and countless other things. A true professional. Darren was great on this picture. One of the things that he insisted on doing, and you have to remember I was a neophyte director. This was my first picture. Darren really was very into doing readings. In other words, doing readings of the script with the cast members between takes and between setups. Very interested in keeping everyone proactive, so that they were thinking about the scene, and that they could run their lines together just for tempo and stuff. And again, somebody who really cared, somebody who really was there for the picture, and was really completely professional. And again, a great honor to work with someone like that. Now, Smithers' office.
And you'll see here where one of the scenes were on the forefront of the screensavers for
Oh,
computers
right.
when you come to the fish tank.
The fish tank. You want to explain that? Well, we haven't gotten there yet.
But as
I
soon as
don't know
you'll
what we're talking
explain
about.
it.
Another.
You can see it in the background
That's
there.
the fish tank.
Give you some moral support.
All right, there it is.
That looks like a screensaver from today's computer. Someone took our suggestion, frozen fish.
That's true. Frozen fish. Actually, I think it's fish in aspic, if I remember. I think that's what the script called them. Now, which is interesting because if you watch the whole movie, you'll see that there actually is a frozen fish motif in this picture, or a dead fish motif. Dead heat, dead fish. You see.
We never brought that up in our creative meetings, Mark. This is a new revelation.
Well,
for us
sometimes
here.
subtext is something that you don't consciously put into a piece, but through
sometimes
careful
you're-
analysis and distance, you get a concept of it, running
Okay.
motifs and so
I
forth.
thought it was kind of ham-fisted myself.
Well, you wrote it. But there you go. No, we like it. And if you, we'll remind you. Oh, this is a great place. This is the Water Reclamation Plant. I think it's in Van Nuys. It's just off the San Diego Freeway, north of Ventura Boulevard. Great location.
Shows up in a lot of movies.
It does. Now, I want to say that this location was recommended to me by the great production designer Robert Boyle, who worked with Hitchcock, did a whole bunch of Hitchcock movies, whom I happen to know from working with him on Jumpin' Jack Flash, one of his later pictures. And he said, this place is great. And it was. This guy at the desk here is named Chip Heller. And I just thought he could play a sleaze very well. And
And
he did.
he does it really well.
Yeah,
You mean that in the nicest possible way?
absolutely. He's an actor. But he's good.
Our leading lady.
Lindsay Frost.
Lindsay Frost. By the way, this is my adolescent fantasy shot.
What shot isn't your adolescent fantasy shot, Mark?
I try to think young. Lindsay Frost is fantastic, and we actually, our casting director,
Steve Jacobs.
Steve Jacobs, recommended her. I mean, he recommended a lot of people, but he showed us her tape, and Lindsay had been living in New York and was a regular on As the World Turns. In fact, the part that she played on As the World Turns was the same part that Meg Ryan had originally played and vacated so that she could go off and be in Hollywood movies. So I went to New York to do some casting, and I met Lindsay. In fact, when she read for the part, her boyfriend at the time came up to the hotel room for the reading. I thought it would be good for proprietary reasons. And is that the right word? Well, whatever. Anyway, and he played the Mortis part to her, Randy James, just for the reading, which is always great because, you know, you can always
Is he a
tell.
known actor?
I don't remember his name, and I don't know. But he was a struggling actor in New York at the time. So it was kind of an audition for him, too, in a way, though he didn't get a part.
Did you mention Lindsay was on the cover of Soap Opera Digest while this was filming?
Wow.
I got her to autograph it for me. I said, I want you to autograph it a very special way to Terry. Thanks for that torrid weekend. And she did.
I like it.
And you have not shown that to your wife, I assume.
No. She must never find out about it.
Seen these guys before?
Oh, now this is a very bad insert that we shot, because if you look at her fingernails, those weren't Lindsay's hands. And is that Pamela
That was yes.
Vincent? I think it was. That's
Treat's
Williams'
fiancée
wife,
at the
or
time.
fiancée.
Yes.
You know, and I think I
And
missed.
Joe's wife now is also in the movie. Kim.
Is she in the
Where
movie?
is she in the movie?
She is a nurse. I will try and highlight walking by in the hallway.
Please, because I seem to recall that we thought about putting her in, but I missed her. But there was another lab technician who walked by, which I think I was looking at somebody when she walked by, Beth Toussaint, where Bigelow looks at her and says hi or something. That just happened, didn't it? I think I missed it. Very nice. I remember seeing in a lot of rock videos, or in a few rock videos, and we cast her. So,
And of course, Lindsay's brother is Mark Frost.
Mark Frost,
Yes.
right, who did Twin Peaks with David Lynch, and actually is a pretty fine novelist. Did a couple of great kind of Conan Doyle pastiches, which are quite wonderful. The List of Seven is a terrific novel, and I know he did a sequel to it. Very talented.
I want to say something about the Resurrection Room here, which is one of the most impressive sets I've seen, especially in a movie like this.
Yeah, it's a cool set. Now, I actually, we had a fellow on this picture named Patrick Reed Johnson, who was kind of a jack of all trades on this
Yeah.
picture.
He
But
was.
I think his credit was visual effects, special visual effects or something,
And then you allowed him to direct Second Unit.
which was a smart choice on my part. Anyway, he came up with the original designs for this room, which were then, dealt with by our production designer and art director. Art director, by the way, is John Gary Steele, who is still, whom I run into at the Sony Studios every now and again. Seems to work all the time.
And Patrick, actually, going back to Patrick for a moment, went on to direct a little movie called Space Invaders.
That's right.
That actually created a lot of heat for him. Steven
right.
Spielberg saw it, loved the movie. Patrick went from that to a deal at Universal where he developed a bunch of movies, and then ended up making a movie for Don Steele at Turner Films with George C. Scott.
Really?
Yeah,
George C. Scott, I didn't know that. That's great. That's great. I know he did Baby's Day Out,
right. That's right, for John Hughes.
and then he did something called Angus.
That was the movie that has George C. Scott in
okay,
it.
great.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see it, so that would explain why I didn't know it. Yeah, so he did pretty well, and he's a very good writer.
Yeah.
I have to say something
Wonderful
about this.
imagination.
This gentleman was a wrestler.
This
And
guy
I-
was a wrestler.
And we had to have oxygen on the set for him between takes
That's
because he
right.
was so out of breath.
That's right.
And we had a
All right, check out this mask. This is a Steve Johnson mask. Actually, not a makeup, a mask, a full-face mask. But look at the close-ups of this mask, because it's really weird. It's like it looks like one of these weird optical illusion things, because he's got two faces in one.
2.5.
It's pretty cool.
Are we paying Steve by the face?
yeah.
Well, I remember on the day of shooting, he came running in, because look at that. We had a very complicated makeup that we were going to do, and he said, you know what? We could save 2.5 hours of makeup if we just use this mask.
Why didn't we use a mask on Treat?
Good
We
question.
did.
Well, no, we didn't. We had a very complex
He had
prosthetic.
long makeup
That's-
procedure.
You're
Well,
absolutely
I-
right. He did.
yeah.
Many hours.
That's for makeups that you'll see later in the picture.
And in the upcoming scene when we see him dead,
Right.
which we'll see, that took a
Well,
great deal of
the
time.
reason we didn't use masks on Treat was so that he could actually have his face, augmented by
Yes.
prosthetics, so that for the acting.
You're right.
And Treat was very patient, sitting through these very long makeup. So I think it's like 4.5, 5 hours.
It was brutal,
brutal.
but it began to wear on him towards the end of the picture.
Yeah.
Whose hand was that? Does anyone remember whose hand?
Yours.
It was mine? Oh. He said, I can't even remember that, but
I think
know
that
it
was your
It
hand.
probably was. I was probably trying to do a Dario Argento there and
Yeah.
have my hand in there.
You'll see at the end credits
cool
we have
shot.
hand supplied by.
And of course, that is a rubber fire extinguisher. And this is our ticking clock, so you can see that the air is getting sucked out. Got to keep the suspense going. Okay, now Treat is actually very intense in the scene if you watch him. Ow. And the dog, had to have the
Oh,
dog.
I love that dog.
I love the dog too.
That dog is an invention of Nick Mark, who was up for the directing before we went with Mark, who suggested a dog watches Roger suffocate instead of the other way around, and graciously let me use that concept.
That's
when
very
we actually
good.
wrote the script.
No, I know Nick, and Nick's a very good guy. He directs a lot of television. Up, the old slide. We have a lot of people sliding on floors in this movie. And now watch Treat closely here. Oh, the dog is. See, that's the pathos moment. The dog and Treat making eye contact. Now watch Treat's face here. This is really good. Now look at his eyes. Wow. All right, check this out.
Nice.
I think actually he'd had some bad sushi the night before, and I think that actually really helped him in that scene.
I think we were all there at that sushi night.
That's right.
And, all right, and so here's the aftermath. This is Joe's big dramatic scene in the movie.
I remember this. We got it right before the lunch break. We were pushing for
That's right.
meal penalty.
Right, because we didn't want him to eat and then have to do the scene. We wanted him to be hungry.
Hankett does a fine job here.
Yeah, he is good in this. You know, the interesting thing about Joe, and the thing that attracted us to wanting to have Joe in the picture was...
Because New World said they wouldn't make the picture without him.
This is true. But that being said, we had seen a documentary. Joe had done this documentary where he played himself. He played Joe Piscopo in New Jersey. And also Joe doing a lot of shtick, doing a lot of impersonations, which he was very good at. But it was interesting to see him playing like just Joe.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, maybe we can take that real Joe, that New Jersey guy, and have it work for this character.
And actually, I think that if Joe had trusted himself even a little bit more to just let him be himself, that it would have worked even better.
I think you're right.
That's a good observation.
But, you know, it's always tough. It's always tough. Sometimes, and granted, I have to confess, I did not have a great deal of experience working with actors, especially on films.
This is how they resurrect.
So I probably wasn't as much help to him as I could have been. Actors sometimes, especially when they're doing something different, may try too hard. Sometimes trying too hard is the toughest thing.
Right. I mean, he's a hugely talented guy.
And coming up here when Treat is resurrected and he goes through the body movements, it's quite interesting to see how much he moves his body himself. There's no wires, it's all his own muscles just pushing him up and down.
Right.
Looks like they may have found a way around that too, Doug.
He's also good at playing dead. I like that. that's
He's a natural.
yeah, I don't see any breathing here. And look closely.
Then I hope you'll shoot him in the head.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Now the resurrection begins. Now, look at the electrical impulses that are happening there. We had a guy named Ernie Farino who designed those shots for us, and I have to tell you, if any of these electrical sparks look similar to the sparks that Arnold Schwarzenegger had enveloping him in the first Terminator movie, that's because a lot of them are the same ones. Because Ernie, who did those shots as well, and it's a film that I edited, had a library of these elements, these electrical elements. So we were able to recycle them, using them in a different way, and also save a little money in the process.
Hi, guys.
You're live.
Of course I'm alive.
Yep, he is alive.
Hell of a shot there.
Hey, Roger.
Now,
Roger.
that cut there is something I just have to... one of the things we realized, this resurrection machine was so delicate because those little plastic grids, it's actually very difficult for somebody to get off of the resurrection machine and do it in a way that on film would not look very clumsy and ridiculous. So we always had a problem getting somebody off that machine. It was true of the big ugly wrestler in the fight scene that preceded it as well. We had to do a little weird cut, but I guess it works well enough.
Mm-hmm.
And here he is, Darren McGavin as Dr. McNabb. Where'd you get that name, McNabb? Did that just come out of thin air?
Seemed to me that was a minor character in a Old Honeymooners episode.
Ah. All right. So, it's great. I mean, Darren McGavin is just an
Iconographic.
Iconographic. That's the word I was fishing for. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
You're the word.
That's why he's the writer.
That's it.
He's the word man.
That's why I is the writer.
But it is great because at the end of the day, you can always cut to Darren McGavin, and you get a feeling of gravitas. See, I mean, what is he thinking? So it's really a good thing.
Gravitas. There's a good word.
Yeah, it's a word of heaviness. It's good stuff.
But when I reached that,
So this is the slow realization that something may be different than it was before.
Well, it's uncommon, but it's happened before. The clinically dead people.
Also, I'm checking out the little computer screens there, and it's interesting to see how far computer screens
Right.
have come. since we did
Keyboards
this
are the
movie.
same.
Keyboards are virtually the same.
what is it?
All right, we're going to come up to a cool Steve Johnson effect here in a minute, so everyone get ready.
Can I borrow those, please?
Now, maybe it's not quite happening yet.
The bit with the stethoscope is nicely done, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was very cold. It was amazing he didn't react to that.
Well, I think that helped to push him into the... look at the reactions. You really get a whole thought process through reactions. Treat's a very, very good actor.
Yeah, he plays it real, which makes the scene
Yeah.
weird.
Well, that makes the whole character work, which is great. And let's face it, you do a movie like this, it's a horror film with comedy or a comedy horror film, and that's a tough line.
Really
very
tough line.
He played it straight and took it seriously, and I mean, that really goes a long way towards making it work, I think.
That's ridiculous.
Becky, we've both seen this guy shit-faced. He's looked a hell of a lot worse.
Yep.
That's Joe's improv right there.
But good.
Not a bad one.
Yeah. Okay, I'm waiting for the Steve Johnson effect. It'll happen soon.
Actually, I like actor improvs because as the writer, I get credit for them.
When they're good.
That's right.
And when they're not, you can say that was an improv and should not have been there.
Indeed.
Okay, here we go. Now, cut to the insert. Now, this is pretty cool, isn't it? This is to get those veins to glow, he used kind of a very thin wire that transmitted electricity.
What's interesting, too, that was a time when there was no CGI, so you couldn't go in and implant it. It had to be on the set being filmed.
That's true. In fact, there's obviously no CGI in this picture. And most of the effects are real-time, on-set effects, which are very cool. It's a whole different world today. But, one of the lessons that we should always bear in mind is that you can do a lot of on-set effects, even today. And they're generally a lot cheaper than CGI, and sometimes more controllable. Depends on what they are. Certainly, in some cases, more believable.
Heard the worst of it.
I'm dead, Rebecca. How much worse can it get?
It's a great line. I'm dead, Rebecca. How much worse can it get?
The process has an unfortunate side effect.
That scene's taken from the original DOA. It actually mirrors the way Edmund O'Brien reacts to the news of his own death.
Right.
Well, it wasn't taken from it, Terry. You paid homage to it.
Right. Well, inspired by it.
Inspired
Fair,
by.
yes.
Which is an interesting point for those of you who don't know. One of the inspirations for this film, or actually the film that Dead Heat riffs on, is a picture called DOA, which was made, I believe, in 1949.
50.
50. Well, I was 1 year off. Directed by Rudolph Maté, starring Edmund O'Brien as a fellow named Bigelow, who's a businessman who's he's on a business trip. He stops in some town off the highway. I believe, or is it in San Francisco? I think it's in San Francisco. He goes to a bar.
It is San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah. But actually, he lives somewhere near Palm Springs, around the way
It
to
was
Palm
between L.A. and San Francisco.
Springs. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the town. Anyway, somebody poisons his drink for reasons that I still can't remember, but it's irradium poisoning, I think it's called, something like that. And he discovers that he's got like 24 hours to live, so he goes on a mad quest to find his killer.
Right. So with Dead Heat, the idea was to take that one step further. He's not only dying, he's already dead and decomposing throughout the movie.
Right. By the way, those lips in the mirror are not Treat's lips, because Treat was long gone by the time we realized we needed this reflective shot.
And I think this is very funny. We see why men cannot put on lipstick.
Yes.
It's not in our gene.
And there are those of us who think that even for those men who enjoy putting on lipstick, they often don't. It takes a real man to be able to hold your lipstick well. That's all I can say. Most of the time, I think it looks, well, I won't say it.
Okay.
It's never been my thing. This was shot from the top of the Beverly Center parking lot, as I recall.
I don't know, tribal memory, I guess.
Yeah,
Now that's acting.
that's acting. I think we were somewhere in the Hollywood Hills here. Now, this is interesting. Now, Randy James' costume here is something that I really like, and Lisa Jensen, who was our very talented costume designer, came up with the idea that we should model her wardrobe, Randy James' wardrobe, after
Mrs. Peel.
Mrs. Peel from the Avengers, Diana Rigg. And because Diana Rigg used to wear a lot of close-fitting body outfits, so, look at the pants and...
And this is a practical location. I remember we went into the house, and by the time we were done with it, we had to redo the driveway.
That's right.
Do a lot of remodeling to get it back into shape for them.
As I recall, this house is actually owned by one of the nation's foremost experts on Geoffrey Chaucer.
Is that true?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
And he actually liked me as a writer, even though this material is perhaps somewhat less lofty than the works of Chaucer.
I think he had meetings with you discussing some rewrites for Chaucer. Anyway, I do remember this house very well. They have a great pool, a great swimming pool, which we'll see later. But, our experience shooting at this location, I guess the interesting point is that if you live in your house and you rent it out to a movie company, be wary because, no matter what they say...
Why? I'd love to get my driveway redone and get my house painted if I could only get a movie company and...
Yeah, we did good.
Well, that's right. That's a very pragmatic approach, I suppose.
It seemed to me with machine gun fire, you might expect things to be not well at the end of it.
This is true.
Interesting, some of the furniture that we see in the set is very popular today.
Yeah.
It's lasted quite a while.
Well, I think it was retro, probably retro even then. This was the very first scene that we shot. The police station scene being the first day of actual shooting, but this was on an insert day prior to real production where we shot Vincent Price on his deathbed. Now we have, 2 daytime zombies here. And when we auditioned for a lot of the zombie characters, we actually met with a lot of mimes, people who could move well and so forth. And these gentlemen are, Pons Mar is one of them. I guess I believe he's the guy on the right, or the Caucasian gentleman. I love that Randy James picture over there, kind of the two-faced Randy James, or the reflective image, which is, again, a little bit of subtext, if you can believe it.
Your secret's safe with me.
There you go.
I think that after the fact, probably this scene was miscalculated because zombies in the light of day just aren't as frightening as they are, at night.
I think you have a good point.
Yeah, had we been able to shoot it at night, I think we would have gotten a totally different effect.
I think you're right.
Viewing it.
I will say that the makeups, particularly the other zombie, not this one, hold up pretty well in daylight, but still, they just aren't all that scary.
You just feel more comfortable when you're watching. You don't feel threatened.
Yeah, exactly. So the suspense is kind of muted.
Suddenly using zombie sense.
Yeah, I think he smells Doug Bigelow. That's zombie. Now, a tree jumping out of the jacuzzi like that, I have to say, was kind of inspired by Sylvester Stallone jumping out of the water in Rambo 2, which is a film that I edited. I mean, if you think about it, it's utterly ridiculous that he could.
But he goes holding his breath for a
jacuzzi.
long time. But he's dead.
Yeah, actually, we have a line that refers to that in a minute. Okay. Now this little shot here Well, that insert moment was severely trimmed by the MPAA, who actually severely trimmed many, many things in the movie.
Well, they wanted to give us an X rating for a while.
Yes, they would not give us an R rating. I think we submitted the picture 9 times before we got the R.
Well, there's a scene coming up we can discuss. That was really the pivotal point
That's right.
that we had to edit down.
That's right. That'll come later in the picture in the last act. But I believe, if we're lucky, that there'll be a whole bunch of supplements on this disc that will include some of the original cuts.
Let me put in a mention of a lost line from the script here, looking at the jacuzzi zombie. In the original script, Joe Piscopo says, well, at least we know what this guy's name was. And Trade says, what's that? He goes, Stu.
Stu!
Thank you very much.
Well, we do have that electrical stew or some kind of stew line somewhere elsewhere in the picture. Maybe we thought that the stew concept was redundant. See, here's the dead fish motif. So we do have the...
my favorite.
I don't know what it all means. Well, her favorites always die. So maybe we're all fish.
Now we see Roger becomes her favorite, you see.
That's right.
Yeah, I recognize that guy.
Further questions? Just
I think Lindsay Frost looks great in this picture, by the way. And
Oh my, yes.
yeah, and she has had a pretty good career doing a bunch of television movies and films and projects.
2 weeks ago.
She worked out very well for this movie.
He's my father.
In a little-known series called Nightmare Cafe I was very fond of.
Oh, I never saw that.
It was terrific. You should see if it's available somewhere.
Oh, I will. Thanks for the tip.
Dead already. I'm a walking corpse, just like those killers.
This is
Now, by the way, check out. I can't remember if that sweat on Joe's shirt was like real or whether that was the makeup. I think that must have been real. Anyway, let's see if the continuity holds.
Did we say a word about Treat's wardrobe, which was quite a challenge for Lisa because she had to keep track of how many burns, bullet holes,
That's
tears, and
absolutely
so
correct.
forth. Since it was not filmed in order, she had to have them all cataloged according to the degree of damage the suit had undergone at that point in the story.
Right.
Dante Pharmaceuticals.
Oh, Dante Pharmaceuticals. Now, when you wrote that, Dante Now, speaking of Dante, Joe Dante, who is an old friend of mine and also gave us a lot of support in the making of this picture and helping to get it made by believing in me. But my question, Terry, is, were you thinking of Joe Dante when you called it Dante Pharmaceuticals?
I was actually thinking of the author of The Inferno.
Oh, the original Dante. Well, see, I was thinking of Joe. So there you go. So it worked out for all of us.
Why not?
Would you like me to write it down?
You don't have to. You're coming with us.
Oh, forget it. I know my rights.
Are you sure? Let me remind you, just in case. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against
What
you.
are you doing?
Right now, you are...
We're actually coming up on a pretty cool scene. In the original script, Treat goes into the bathroom to comb his hair, only to discover that some of the hair comes out in his comb. The decomposition process has begun. Mark had an idea how that scene might be made even more dramatic.
In my closet.
Something for that unexpected overnight guest, Miss James?
From an ex-boyfriend, Mr. Bigelow. A very ex.
We'll see that scene shortly. Ah, there it is.
Also, a little continuity problem. His chest ought to be shot up at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're shooting. Yeah, you're right. It should be. But it healed instantly because he's...
That's right. That's right.
It's the old hair loss gag. Well,
Something I can sympathize with.
Doesn't augur well.
You okay in there, Roger?
Great. Fabulous.
So here we go. And that jacket, I remember when the picture was over, we auctioned off we sold off very cheaply a lot of the costumes. And I think I bought that one. I think I wore it for a while. I think I gave it to my son.
Look
So you
good on
still
you.
have it.
I think it's long gone.
Oh, it looks good on you today, Mark.
Thank you.
So you got one of the ones without the bloodstains and bullet holes.
That's it. You know, it looks new.
This is a great scene.
Yeah.
This is this is my favorite scene in the picture, and probably
I would agree
all of
with
ours.
that, yeah.
And probably the best scene in the picture.
And again, it goes back to everything. Excuse me, everything done on set.
Yes, it's all on set, shot in Culver City, for those of you who care about geography. That's Professor Toru Tanaka, who was a wrestler who also played the heavy in many, many pictures. And certainly convincing.
He gave me a martial arts demonstration, gave me a pen, asked me to pretend it was a knife and attack him with it, and disarmed me faster than my eye could follow.
Wow.
Listen, Mongo, we're cops, and if Thul's not out here in 10 seconds, we're
That reminds me of another story, but I want to talk about this scene first. But that's the great Key Luke. Key Luke, of course, is probably best known for playing the number one son to Warner Oland's Charlie Chan in the series of Charlie Chan movies made by 20th Century Fox.
Right, soon to never be seen on FX.
Well, they're going to show 4 of them now. They've decided they're going to show 4, but they're going to have a panel of people explaining why certain things may be racially sensitive.
You
so
know, I think this scene best represents the tone, Terry, of what you were really going for. And it's a really hard tone to find, for 85 minutes. But I think that, in fact, I think we all agree that, this is really the best scene in the movie. And it's the right sort of combination of fantasy and scare and horror and, how did they do that?
Yeah.
I should mention there's a website, the Strange Movies Weird Review site, gives us a special award for being the best zombified Chinese deli scene ever. I'm very proud.
I'll concur. By the way, all of these effects, these physical effects, a fellow named Todd Masters, who basically, working with Steve Johnson, but basically took over this whole scene because it's such a massive scene. And actually, I would say a great deal of our visual effects budget went to this. I call these visual effects, but these are practical effects, practical prosthetic and makeup and animatronic effects. This liver gag, which I love, was accomplished by basically taking the countertop and putting it at an angle so that the liver could roll down.
Use forced perspective so it doesn't look tilted.
Exactly. Of course, those ducks on strings didn't really move at all, but that's all.
Puppeteering.
Lindsay kind of just, poking at them, it makes them look like they're moving. If you look closely, you'll see that particular fowl almost didn't make it into the meat grinder. It kind of bounced off it, but then, I love this. Bam!
Who's hungry?
So this is great. Now there's a shot that was cut up by the MPAA.
Right.
Because originally, Treat lifted up his hand, and you could see that it was cleaved apart.
Okay, here's the best scene in the movie.
And this is done as puppets. I mean,
well, there's actually an actor in this suit.
Actors, yeah, not puppets.
There was an actor in here on kind of little walkers and things. Very hard to do. I imagine he needed a good chiropractor after doing a couple of takes of this.
The original script called for that to be a side of beef, but as Mark pointed out, it's hard to animate just one side of beef. It worked better if it was a whole stripped cow.
So there we go. God, that's...
Side of beef would have been cool, too, though.
Yeah. And I have to say, all things considered, I've never seen a scene like this in a movie.
No.
And may never see one again. So I think we can all be proud that we have produced this.
That's a great scene.
Let this scene out into the world. And you notice all the little fish in the counter in the background are still like they're struggling to get out. It's just great.
Now, even people who don't like this movie say that deli scene, there's something there that they haven't seen before.
Yeah. And now, of course, now that the regeneration ray is gone,
everything dissolves.
It just reverts back to its primal state of ooze.
As must we all.
There you go. I love Lindsay in this shot, by the way. That's my favorite shot of Lindsay Frost in the picture. I think we probably had a few more disgusting shots.
I think we called lunch right then.
There you go. Our lunch budget that day was low.
Now, does the regeneration ray have any effect on Treat? It occurs to me I should ask Terry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
Long and sad story. We should say a word about the mysterious back room here.
Ah, yes.
And that is, they asked me to have a mysterious back room scene, which you're now seeing. And I said, well, if I already got the butcher shop, you don't need a back room on top of that. And they said, just write it. So what I did was turned out to be unwise. I said, I'm going to write the dumbest scene I could think of. And what I came up with was a zombie duck head. And when they see that, they'll realize this is a waste of time. We don't need this scene. So I turned it in. And unfortunately, they said, zombie duck heads, what a great idea. We've got to use that.
Yeah, I remember Mark saying that.
So careful what you ask for.
There you go.
You just might get it.
And you were referring to the studios, not to David and I as producers.
Yes,
suggesting
indeed. Yes,
that.
indeed.
Okay. I want a clarification for history.
Because we did have executives on this picture, and they definitely had opinions. But they were actually very good. We lucked out.
With the passing of time, I've come to actually like the zombie duck head.
I like it, too. It's cute. Whether it sustains the whole scene,
I'm just sorry we didn't merchandise it. We could have picked up a few extra dollars.
We still can.
We deceased.
Who do you think they were?
One way to find out.
Okay. Now, this is an interesting scene. This is the
Sewing up treat scene.
sewing scene, which I always felt, well, it has vague sexual undercurrents.
Vague.
Maybe not so vague.
You're quite the seamstress.
Well, I need a cigarette.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I'll take my chances.
Now, if you look closely, you see Treat's makeup has changed a little bit, starting to slowly get a little more wan and pale and get that sallow complexion. This is Glendale. This is the Glendale Public Library, whereas I recall once they let us get in here and gave us permission to shoot, they kind of regretted it and decided that we had to leave. So we kept
Room tone.
Room tone, right?
I kept saying it's room tone.
Yeah, we kept
Postponing our departure.
Even heard of?
Here's one. George Nelson Canfield.
Now, seeing it was cut out of this, they're actually attacked by a library zombie.
That's right. I remember a zombie bursts through a stack of books and grabs Lindsay and starts choking her. But I guess we've felt that it wasn't organic to the scene or something. I can't remember
seemed
exactly
tacked
what it
on.
was, but
The scene I will never forget is the zombie in between takes, relaxing with a book on the sidelines and having unprepared library patrons round the corner go, ah! Inside of a Walking Dead person.
Oh, my God.
Checking out the volumes.
Yeah, it was interesting because actually the library was functioning that day. It's not like they closed it for us. So
Indeed.
it was actually a miracle that we got to finish this day, as I recall. They were very adamant about getting us out.
I do want to say a word about this scene. There's a bit they cut out that I'm still bitter about. What Roger is supposed to observe in the library, the reason this scene exists, he's supposed to look around at all of these books and say, look at these endless rows of books. Look at the mysteries, the romances, the westerns, the wars, the biographies. All of that, they're right in front of me, but I can't get to them because I don't have time. And that's supposed to be the moment when his mortality really crashes in upon him.
Where he realizes he won't have time to read any more good books.
Right.
Because he's on a mission and he has no time to read.
And the
What a
studio
drag.
the studio felt that took away from the basic story and kind of lost that. But I think that was an unwise decision. We should have kept that.
Well,
That said, this isn't a bad scene either.
no,
Always
it's
thought he'd go out in a blaze of glory.
pretty good. I mean, there's old... Yeah, it's pretty emotional.
Roger.
Perhaps it's subtler than mine.
Who can say? We never got the opportunity to shoot your version and find out. Now, for some reason, we couldn't get a dolly in here that could move fast enough to really do this scene right. So Treat had to run slower than we would have liked.
Right.
Otherwise, he would have caught up to the camera.
Hey, Raj, that was quite a chase. Not bad for a guy in your condition.
Nice library.
Just being dead agrees with you.
I think we almost lost the library scene altogether, but as I recall, it was David who argued we should keep that because look at the production value we're getting out of this
Did I
library.
say that?
You did. It's true. It looks great.
It looks great, and I think emotionally it's important too, because this is the scene where Treat's character finally realizes where he's at, kind of comes to terms with it, and deals with it ultimately so that he can get on with his business. It's kind of important.
Well, thematically, it's critical, but it's hard to argue that with the studio.
Yeah.
Here's your chance to prove him wrong. You're good, and you're dead.
I'm good and I'm dead.
By the way, you remember when we first went out with the script, Michael? We took it to Mike Medavoy at Orion, and he wanted to do it, but he thought it was just a pure comedy.
That's right. That's
How
absolutely
would that
right.
have been different?
A pure comedy.
Right, and I can't remember if we actually discussed casting with him or not. I have an idea that we did, but I can't remember who we talked about with him.
Interesting.
Half of all the people who ever lived are still alive today.
Come on.
I should make a comment on their observation. Half the people still alive, half the people who ever lived are still alive today. I've since found out that's actually not accurate. The closer number is about 15 to 1, which is not nearly as funny a gag.
Right. Well, you can change it for
Poetic
artistic
license.
purposes.
I heard of a guy named Hal Mishkoff on the internet who claimed to be the first person to come up with that and was astounded to see it in my screenplay. So here I'm giving him credit for what it's worth.
Well, you two sure know how to show a girl a good time.
Don't mention it.
Back at the morgue, that's Alan Alsabrook, who was our production manager, just walked in the elevator there. Terrific guy.
Hello.
Well, you...
What we're about to come up to is very interesting, the chest plate
Oh, yeah.
that Treat is wearing.
Right. Another Steve Johnson creation.
And I think we had to even cut it down a little bit from what we've shown here.
Yeah.
Than usual in here today.
Wherever did you find the time?
Well, we'll see it in a moment. By the way, I don't think I talked about our DP, Robert Yeoman, who did a wonderful job on this movie, who's
How many shooting days did we have, Mark?
35? Is that right? I think that's right.
We went 7 weeks, 5-day weeks.
Yeah, there's the chest plate. I remember we had some trouble with this, and it kept kind of riding up.
Yes.
So
So how are you feeling?
sometimes we had to cut away a bit, but it works pretty well. Anyway, Bob Yeoman has gone on to shoot a lot of really good movies like The Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore for Wes Anderson. And he was really very good in this movie. I think this was probably his first kind of genre picture. Or as one of our executives used to say, shooting rubber. You got to shoot rubber.
Who said that?
I think that was, who was that? It was,
Could only have been Barry Bernardi.
Ah, you're right, it was.
Well, decomposition.
Who's also been very successful, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Produces a lot of pictures.
Should we mention that New World actually commissioned a sequel to Dead Heat?
They did.
They did. And unfortunately, the Writers Guild went on strike. During the period this was premiered, it didn't make quite enough money to justify the sequel.
There you go.
But in the meantime, I was working on the sequel. Well, the reason I mention it now is because I love this scene where she gives him an autopsy while he's still alive. The scene I planned for the sequel was that Smithers would give herself an autopsy, performing it on her very own body in real time.
Well, I'd like to have seen that scene.
Talk about your adolescent fantasy, Terry.
I had a great catchphrase, too. It's going to say, Dead Heat 2. This time, they're even more dead.
Deader than dead.
Deader than dead.
Now, you see his makeup is even more pronounced here. And
Yes.
we all, I mean, I remember thinking that we went a little too far here with the eyes. They're kind of raccoonish, personally.
I remember that.
But there was nothing
By
to
the
be
way,
done.
Joe is not wearing a chest plate. That's all Joe.
That's all Joe.
Nor is Claire.
I'm not giving up hope, Roger.
You go ahead, man. I'll catch up with you later at Randy's.
Okay.
So are we getting towards, we're almost, God, I think we're almost at the end of the second act.
Wow, time
Movie's
flies.
just spinning along,
Should be a lot of money in carving up dead
I
people.
think. Well, you must know more about act breaks than me. But
We're coming up to
we're
the
not there.
ambulance scene pretty soon, are we
soon.
not?
Well, yeah.
Pretty soon. We should give Darren Star credit for the body dock license plate. I think serves the story very well.
Yes, it did.
I can tell.
Somebody making a Night Stalker movie?
Is
They
somebody
should.
doing that?
It seems to me I heard there was one in development.
Wow. Well, I hope. I mean, it's all down to casting, isn't it? That's the character, Kolchak, the Night Stalker that Darren McGavin originated. That'll be a hard one to be as good as. This is, I guess it was Hollywood Cemetery. Is that what they
Hollywood
call
Cemetery.
it? Which is still there. And this is Night for Night.
There was a scene cut from the script where they're attacked by a zombie who digs himself out of his own grave with a shovel, which is another thing I've always regretted losing.
Yes, I really like that scene too. And that scene was basically cut for budget because it would have been expensive to do. We actually did a budget on it and discovered it would cost us more than we had, basically.
Hey, let's mention another scene that was cut out just quickly. They come upon two kids who are shooting each other with toy guns. And the one says, "You're dead." It says, "I'm not dead, you're dead." They argue over who's dead, which I thought was a great commentary on Roger's predicament.
So now what? I haven't got a key.
Okay. Here comes the insert of the lock. As you know, or as you should know, most inserts are shot much later than the principal photography. So this is an actual mausoleum. at the cemetery.
It's pretty close quarters. I remember we used vanilla smoke.
That's right.
Throughout the whole
which was not
evening.
Not a very. I mean, it gave it a nice little aroma, but basically, we didn't enjoy it, as I recall.
Well, we had to stop a couple times to let it air out because it was
Yeah.
making people nauseous.
Yeah, I don't like smoke myself. Now, there's a moment that was cut out here. In fact, there are a lot of moments that were cut out here. Right over here, Randy's kind of leaning against that door, and she opens it, and a skeleton falls out, which I'm hoping that you'll find in one of the supplements on this disc. In fact, this scene, as I recall, there were actually 2 visits made to the mortuary, and we ultimately compressed them into one. And again, I'm hopeful that the supplements of the original cut will be on your disc. We had a scene here where Dick Miller, the great Dick Miller,
yes,
from many Roger Corman movies, many Joe Dante movies, plays a night watchman who comes in and interrupts them, and there's a bit of comic banter, and the studio made me cut the scene. Now, for me, just having Dick Miller in your film is a great thing. I guess I couldn't articulate why that was to the studio's satisfaction. Nonetheless, I am a big Dick Miller fan, so I always regretted that we had to cut him out. In fact, I remember vividly calling him to tell him, and he had just been doing some digging in his garden. He was, an unhappy camper. Nothing worse than calling an actor to tell them that they're cut out of a picture. Although many directors don't call them at all, and they don't find out till they take their friends and family to the premiere and they discover they're not in it. Anyway, this is a scene I want to comment on. They return home. They find.
Dead for 5 months.
He didn't steal the bill of sale.
No, he didn't. But you could have stolen.
There's a scene from DOA, the original DOA.
The best scene from DOA.
Oh, this is good.
You were surprised to see me alive, weren't you? But I'm not alive, Mrs. Phillips. Sure, I can stand here and talk to you. I can breathe.
This is so great.
Yeah, Edmund O'Brien is a wonderful actor, too.
And nothing can save me.
What are you going to do?
I kill you now, I have nothing to lose.
No, you've got to listen to
I should mention another DOA was made with Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel within a few months of release of this one.
Right,
that's
with
correct.
Dennis Quaid.
Yes.
Yes.
Jane Kazmarek. And I thought that was a hell of a movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't as well reviewed as the first one, but
It was interesting, different take.
My 2 cents saying I thought it was outstanding.
I actually loaned Dennis Quaid my videotape of the original DOA, which he had never seen when he was prepping for that movie, because his girlfriend at the time was one of my assistants when I was editing. And anyway, I never got the tape back. That's the whole point. So
You never had an attractive assistant working for you when you were working on Dead Heat.
no, this was prior to that. But anyway, actually, we did have some attractive assistants. But what I wanted to tell you was that scene where we find Joe Piscopo dead. I have to say that's where I messed up the most on this movie, because we used a dummy of Joe, and it's easy to miss the fact that it's actually the Doug Bigelow character who's dead.
Yeah, you had to put in a wild line for that.
We had to put in a wild line. So mea culpa. That was bad filmmaking. I'm sorry.
Coming up now is Lindsay Frost's nude scene.
Yes.
Well,
Now,
she's not completely nude.
We lost some of the gruesomeness from this scene as well.
Yes,
didn't
we did. And I'm hopeful that you'll see all of it reinstated on a supplementary scene.
See, Mark, at one point she is completely nude, but by then you don't care.
I was dead.
I don't think there's any complete nudity here. I think her
It's
towel
actually
was
a
on.
dummy at that point.
Oh, well, okay.
But it's the characters.
Yeah. You see, one of the things about making this movie was not only the R rating, but the studio didn't want us to get too gruesome, really. Now, the movie's somewhat gruesome, but we couldn't get really gruesome. I mean, we don't have a lot of super gore in terms of individuals. And
They lied to me.
See, dramatically, he is confronting his own fate here, so this scene really needs to be as disturbing as possible to make the story work.
This scene is pretty disturbing, I think. So, you see what's happening.
Remember how this was done? That was clever.
Yes, that was shot in reverse. And what they did was they used the makeup. Well, you got to see the second part of what happens here. This is the decomposition. So you see the sores are opening, and now we see the mottled skin under the flesh. But what happened was all that modeling was created first, and then by shooting in reverse, we spray painted the flesh color on top of it. And then they used little monofilament wires that were invisible to the camera to pull open these pre-scored sores. That's all Steve Johnson. Okay, and this is, of course, prosthetic limb.
I hate it when that happens.
She's got her real arm behind her back, as you can see. Ooh.
And this is a toned down version from what we had.
Absolutely. This scene used to go on and on and on.
You know, I remember I took a lot of these props to a kid's Halloween party. It was a big success. Scared the hell out of the kids.
Oh, now, this moment.
Please forgive me.
That line, I got that line from Randall William Cook, who's responsible for a lot of the effects on the Lord of the Rings pictures. He was somebody that I had met with who ultimately couldn't work on our movie, Dead Heat. But gave me that line, and I asked him if I could use it, and he said yes. So, a little topper there.
Serves the story.
Yeah. Now, you see there's the subtext, Randy James, the hidden Randy James and the real Randy James, for those of you who are into subtext. So here's our little plot.
Yes.
Plot contrivance.
So the answering machine. This is a really nice moment of the movie. I always like that.
Yeah. Because of the way he plays it, as if to start talking to her.
Rebecca Doug's dead.
I should also mention the letters to numbers clue that he's about to discover was also used in the movie In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood.
I didn't know that.
It's true. That's what finds John Malkovich.
I'm learning lots of stuff today. Well, that came after our picture, didn't it?
It did.
Well, they stole it.
They paid homage to our film.
Call the Writers Guild, Terry. Okay.
Maybe I just will.
Oh, by the way, getting back to DOA, I just realized there was another version of DOA that you didn't mention. This is total trivia, but I'm going to say it. There was a South African production called Color Me Dead, starring Tom Tryon. Did you know this?
No.
It's true.
Cool.
It was made in the early 60s, I think.
Is that before Tom Tryon wrote The Other?
Yes, probably, because I think he became a novelist after he stopped acting. But you can IMDb that one, see if you can find it.
Body. Damn, that's it.
Body. It's Body Doc. I gave it away. I'm sorry.
How could you do that to me?
Terrible. But I assume you've already watched the movie before you listen to our
The
commentary.
license plate makes that work because you've seen it. It's visual.
Okay. Second biggest flaw in the movie, and I'll be glad to take the rap for all of these flaws because I'm the guy who made the flaws. His makeup, of course, has really gotten a lot more intense, and we saw no transition. And actually, had I thought this thing through, I would have had a more gradual transition to this makeup.
What do you think, McNabb?
We've had to be more specific than that.
And of course, the toupee. That's just a nice little bit that Darren is seen as he really is, and McNabb is seen as he really is.
What on earth are you talking about?
Revenge, McNabb.
Gosh, I never thought of that. Nice touch.
Subtext, man.
But this doesn't make any sense. I was helping you.
I don't think so. Loudermilk's think tank built a machine for
Of
resurrection.
course, here's the inside story about what the real motivations were.
You're losing your mind. Your brain is deteriorating.
When you buried him alive, Loudermilk wanted to point the finger at you, but he was afraid to write his McNabb in case you came back and erased it.
I should mention we kind of complicated things by making Loudermilk one of the bad guys. So this explanation does not quite make sense.
Yeah, if you think about it. Like, what's he doing locked up in his crypt trying to escape? Or
There is an explanation. You see, he took someone to replace him in the grave, and they resurrected him out of sheer cruelty. So he'd come to life in the crypt, realize he was trapped, leave the bloodstained clue, and then dissolve without a trace.
And we find this out years later.
That's amazing.
Neither has my aim.
Son of a bitch.
How many others have you buried alive, McNabb? Canfield, the Blue Jeans King? Oliver Lang? Howard Preston? You take their money and you brick them up, is that it?
That's a lie!
Who were Canfield and Preston and Lang? Were these,
Mentioned them in the libraries. Oh,
yeah. Were they friends, or any particular reason?
I just made them up at random, but I think we had to change one of the names for legal reasons. For fear it might actually be confused with a real-life inventor of sweat-to-fit blue jeans.
Right.
And when I stumbled onto all this, you murdered me.
There was a real-life investor?
No.
Inventor?
I thought they were overreacting myself.
Help you? Like you helped Randy James?
Whoa.
Nice jacket.
Oh, the zombie on the left is Ivan E. Roth, who was actually in a film that I edited, or we had a number of editors on. I was the supervising editor on something called Get Crazy that Alan Arkish directed. He played a cocaine dealer. little trivia.
Is in rather poor condition.
Not as poor as you'll be, Thor.
Silence him.
Silence him.
Key-Luke is great in this scene.
I think Hugh is wonderful in this movie, and thank God we had him. He also, of course, at this point in his life, had appeared in Joe Dante's Gremlins as the fellow who sold the gremlin.
Yes.
To the dad initially.
The county morgue. For this very reason, Doctor, we should waste no time. Yeah. Put him in the van, lock him to the side rail.
And again, a true professional, completely prepared, and comes through in his performance.
I hope you don't mind sharing the bed space.
Uh-oh.
Yes, I know it's a nuisance, but then Smithers was always a nuisance.
I'll send you to hell, McNabb. You can't keep me here.
This van is lined in stainless steel, soundproof in case you're thinking of calling for help. Yes, custom made. The perfect.
Yeah, the reason you don't hear us saying anything is we're actually engrossed in this scene. We're all glued to Treat's acting here, too.
How could you not be?
I was actually wondering when Key-Luke tells the henchman to silence him when they whack him with the gun, why a chunk of his face doesn't come off at that point.
Good point.
He's pretty far gone.
Because I don't think the studio would have liked that.
That reminds me of another line I wasn't allowed to use.
Which reminds me, according to your original script, and I know our original concept, what Treat does here to ultimately escape from his confines was a lot more gruesome.
Yeah, there was a discussion. It was very bloody.
It was a discussion. It was very bloody, and we were forced to tone it down. Which is a big argument that you could take either side of this argument, and to this day, it's hard to prove who's right. The studio's contention was that they didn't want to get overly bloody, and of course we were restricted by the R rating. That's absolutely true. On the other hand, does a picture like this benefit from grand guignol gore that does go over the top, like a picture like Reanimator,
or Peter Jackson's film Dead Alive?
Dead Alive, which those are films that go completely over the top with their violence, and that's one of the selling points of the film, and that's one of the things that makes them so cool. We couldn't do that. So it's just an argument, and we ultimately went with this approach of trying to keep it, how shall I say it, more tasteful.
The studio was always ambivalent. They wanted to build it as a Joe Piscopo buddy cop comedy.
Right.
I always felt if they built it as an out-and-out horror film, it would have done a lot better and attracted a more suitable audience.
I agree with you, and if you look at the poster or the video box, there's nothing really to tell you that it's a horror movie. And I knew actually when one of the executives, I think you'll see a supplement on this DVD of the MeFed promotional reel, and that's a film festival in
Market Reel,
right? And anyway, one of the executives at the studio told me after MeFed that they went crazy. They went crazy when they saw this promo reel, and they're saying it's the next Beverly Hills Cop. And when he said that, I knew we were in trouble because Beverly Hills Cop. I mean, this is about a guy who's decomposing.
Beverly Hills Cop had no Walking Dead.
I'm going to inject coming up here, Terry, one of your siblings.
This is true.
Shane Black, who's a very successful writer and starting to direct. Do you
it's
wrote
true.
a little part for him here?
But before that, here's a fellow, the blonde-haired ambulance attendant is Tom Nolan, who's a wonderful actor who actually got into education and is now Dean of Students at Crossroads School in Los Angeles, California. I guess it would be Santa Monica, California.
Well, the cop you're about to see pull a gun on Treat is, in fact, my brother Shane, author of Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, and Long Kiss Goodnight. Set a record for selling a screenplay for $4 million, became an industry buzzword. And he's about to come up to Treat with a gun and ultimately surrender his gun to Treat. What's notable is both Shane and I had cameos in this film. As you can see, they kept Shane and they cut out me.
But again, with luck, you will see Terry's cameo as a supplementary feature on this DVD set.
Because, we can only hope.
No, well, I found a copy of that scene. It's a scene called the Death Day scene. And I believe that we found a usable copy of it that we can put on the disc.
I think you are in this, Terry. As the motorcycle pulls away, I think you're standing on the corner looking at it. I don't know if we still have that scene in.
By the way, I want to make sure we see. I think Shane has another close-up yet again.
In the background there, Terry. That's where you are.
Wow, fame.
And by the way, on the left there, that's Lou Hobson, who actually was a nurse at the time, a male nurse at Cedars-Sinai. And we liked this shot so much, we just let him go completely over the hill. That is a shot of the reclamation plan for Dante Lab, but we painted in the signs and everything. That was done as an optical, a visual effect. I think Pete Coran did that shot for us.
I just love the fact that the place you resurrect dead people is actually a place where they treat sewage.
Ladies and gentlemen, Arthur P. Loudermilk.
All right, and the return are actually, I should say, I say it's the return of the Loudermilk character, but we
God,
actually
he
never
looks
saw him
great,
alive.
doesn't he?
Yeah,
He brought so much class to this movie.
Yeah.
sure did.
He was terrific to work with.
He would show up every day in blue jeans wearing red sneakers, which I thought were great. And he really was a very playful, lovely person, always had a good word for everyone, very patient. And you know, when we found that we were running into some time problems in shooting out these scenes, he actually agreed to come back and do some extra work for us for no additional pay, as I recall.
Yeah, that's correct.
And he could have easily stuck it to us. This is, we did this off a camera truck in Hollywood.
On Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah. And right, see this shot right here? I swear to God, right off to the right of the camera, Neil Young had been recording an album. He came out. I could see him. Neil Young and some of his band members were out there watching us shoot. So, if that has any relevance, I'm a big Neil Young fan.
I should mention Vincent Price's first words to me endeared him to me forever. They were, and I quote, "Great script."
Absolutely.
How many of those rich bozos you suppose he's got in there tonight?
Absolutely. That's Mike Sod, by the way, who had that line of dialogue as one of the security guards. Mike Sod's a Chicago actor who had worked, I believe, for the Organic Theater under Stuart Gordon's direction back in the 70s, I would say.
Grabbing nobodies are devouring all that is yours, like rodents after a lump of cheese.
Part of this speech here was actually written by studio head Steve White.
Did he actually write part
He
of
did.
this? Good Lord.
You know, I was bitter about it at the time, but when I saw Vincent actually deliver the lines, they're not half bad.
Poor people are supposed to die, but
Now, Steve White was an interesting guy. He had been, I believe he was a former groundling.
Really?
I think so. But more to the point,
we can always buy him off.
there was a different studio head before Steve White came aboard who had actually, I think, had greenlit this picture, and then we didn't know what was going on.
Jeff Sheckman.
Was he the studio head at that time?
believe he
Maybe he
was.
was. Yeah, it was Jeff. I know he was there, and then he was gone. So, you know, this project easily could have been 86th.
And Steve was a former head of NBC.
Right.
So this was his first taste of the film business, actually.
But, you know, he gave us the go-ahead, which was a really nice, really good thing.
And credit for that.
Think of what I'm offering.
I love the fact that Treat is so polite here as he kills people. Excuse me, thank you. You'll see. By the way, I haven't said anything about his makeup. One of the ideas here that Steve Johnson had on this final stage makeup, you know, all the shards, especially the ambulance scene, the shards of metal in him. So the idea was to give it a kind of a punky look. And one of the shards in his ear, it looks like an earring. I think it might still be here in this scene.
Hours. Come on, inspect him for yourself.
Gotta watch it in California, you'll start a trend.
There you go. You see? There it is, that earring debris.
Sit down. Well, now that you are satisfied with this poor man's unfortunate condition, I would like to treat you to a little product demonstration. Dr. McNabb, if you would.
Of course.
This model incorporates all of our most advanced refinements. The first to afford...
Well, the line I said that they cut out I wanted to use. Someone says to Treat, "Don't give me none of your lip." Says, "Oh, yeah?" Sad to lose that.
That's a good line. We like body part jokes.
Now, coming up here is an interesting scene where Treat is confronted with another zombie who also has a machine gun. Both of them open fire on each other, and neither can die because they're already dead.
Right.
That's the scene that we had to keep cutting down to get the ratings correct.
That's right. That's
We
right.
had
'cause
a
it-
long discussion with them.
See, I said it was too violent, but it seems to me this isn't really violent at all. This is a Roadrunner cartoon at this
Yeah.
point.
Well, they
Nobody's
want-
getting hurt. It's just insane.
They wanted us to cut it down to make it look more violent, and we kept arguing that keeping it this way, it got to a point where it became very funny.
Yeah. I mean, that's about as short as you could make it and still, I think, have it funny. But it was much funnier when it just went on and on, I thought.
I agree with
because
you.
you just couldn't, like, believe that it was going on and on. It's kind of a Mexican standoff.
That's okay. Don't get up.
Polite indeed.
Yes.
Get him! Get him! Get him!
Now,
Helix looks like he's afraid of the gun here, like he's constipated.
well, Helix was pretty old and frail when he did this. Now, nonetheless, he did let us put a squib on him and had a death scene. He did it, and again, he did a pretty good job.
Hey, my hat's off.
This guy's name, this very large zombie here is named Tiny Ron Taylor, who plays a lot of large people in movies, usually heavies. And of course, you know, we only had Vincent really for 3 days officially, so we had to shoot all of his stuff out as quickly as possible. So a lot of the rest of the scenes were were shot around those 3 days.
What do you want?
Not you, old man. I want him. You're dead, McNabb. You're even deader than I am.
Oh, I don't think so.
Wasn't Joe's original plan to film this scene without his shirt on?
I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't recall for sure. I do know that we wanted to have a more extensive zombie makeup, and he didn't really want to do it. He felt that it was wrong.
I thought he should look drowned.
Yeah, well, if you
wrinkled and
remember, his face was all puffed up, at least when the dummy was hanging in that thing. It's all puffed up, so I guess he got resuscitated and made healthy again.
Presumably.
Hey, why when he comes back to life does he do Darren McGavin's bidding?
I guess they had some kind of programming thing going on that we
I
don't know
see.
about. Some subliminal thing.
Because he was mentally suggestible, just like real-life zombies.
Yeah.
Got it.
Like those jewel thieves in the first scene.
That's right.
Mulberry wine brings out my eyes.
You can actually do that with tetrodotoxin poisoning. It's done in Haiti.
Wow, that's like voodoo stuff.
Indeed.
Isn't that how you met your wife, Terry?
Whenever someone dies of blowfish poisoning, it's actually the same stuff they use to make zombies.
I love it.
My wife notwithstanding.
He said I should hurt
I love this kill that guy, would you, riff coming up here.
But I'm gonna hurt him.
Kill that guy, would you?
Oh no.
Kill him. Why can't you kill him?
I think you would have figured it out.
A little slow there.
Oh no, you bastards aren't gonna take me.
You cheated me.
Now, see, we did that with a minimum of gore. Even though he basically blew out the back of his head, but
It's over, Raj. Forget it, man.
Now, here's a twist I've always been proud of.
Right.
The film needed a little something at the end here.
yes.
In fact, you know, a New World commissioned a sequel to this. I pointed out what I thought was a legitimate objection. I said, well, that's going to be hard to do because every significant character in the story is now dead.
Actually, every character in this story is dead.
Yes.
Terry, did you actually write a draft?
I did. And Randy Levinson, the executive, he said, well, Terry, you've got a resurrection machine. Handle it.
Somebody twice? Not really.
That was a good note.
Yeah.
He was right.
Well, of course.
Someday, perhaps, that'll be readdressed.
Ow.
No, wait. Save the machine. It's short-circuiting.
So we have a film. In the end, every one of our characters is dead.
Yes, it's a very uplifting denouement.
I guess they were concerned about that.
Yeah, well, I guess they have good reason to be, but
There's only one other film I know of, The Bedford Incident, also ends with everyone in the movie dead.
I think, and in the end here, we pay a little bit of homage to Casablanca.
Right.
Yes, you'll have to explain that one, Terry. But here we thought we'd just blow this place up real good. I mean, as much as we could on a limited budget.
Wait, you don't understand. You'll live forever.
Basically, blow it up off screen.
Man, Roger, you are a mess. I've seen meatloaf that looks better.
Now, this is not the original ending from the script. What I originally have is he blacks out, wakes up, he's perfectly fine, Doug's perfectly fine, Clark O'Connell's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you think it's a happy ending, we back out of it, realize this whole thing is, we back out of his eyeballs. He lies there decomposing, and this whole thing is his final death fantasy.
Well, that's a nice ending. Why don't we shoot that?
Well, it's kind of a downer.
Yeah. Now, then there was the idea about having this great walk up to heaven that we were going to do with forced miniatures and glass shots that, again, the studio nixed for money reasons. Pat Johnson's
Bastards.
idea. I like the title exploding at the end.
Too. Oh, the closing theme was from Patrick Reed Johnson, our visual effects coordinator, who's done so much else for the movie also.
Right. He's not the vocalist, but he did co-write the song and put it together for us.
Yes.
So, as they say, a good cast bears repeating, I guess. So here they all are. And
my favorite part is where it says written by Terry Black at the beginning.
I like that part.
First time I got the movie
Terry,
on video.
Without your imagination, we wouldn't be sitting here today watching this. So
Thank you.
That's true. So thanks for writing this.
Yeah, welcome.
It was
gentlemen,
fun, Terry.
And Michael and David, thank you for producing this picture and hiring me.
And Mark, it was a pleasure.
We had a good time.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes,
We'll have to find a way to do it again. Dead Heat 2.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, you know, there's always the resurrection machine.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right? Yeah, you remember all these people? Sarah James Arbite, she was your assistant.
I remember a lot of them.
Abby Goldstein, a wonderful person, as I recall. Marsha Blackburn.
She's still doing still photography.
Yeah, doing a good job. Jack English, and a great gaffer, been around a long time.
Now, Mark, you were explaining, we'll close with this, our assistant has gone on.
Oh, one of our production assistants, David Cohan, is now, actually is the co-creator and co-executive producer of Will and Grace. So he's gone far. Mike Lemaire, our supervising sound editor, actually had done all of the sound editing for the original track on Das Boot. You remember all those great submarine sounds. Wayne Artman was over at Warner Brothers re-recording for many, many years. I'm just looking at all these names. Jane Goldsmith is still doing script supervision. She did Twin Peaks, and I just worked with her on Bad Boys 2, which I edited.
Wow.
And there's Patrick Reed Johnson, Dan Bradley, Steve Johnson.
You know, I'm just wondering if David Cohan conceived Will and Grace on the set of Dead Heat, whether, Michael, you and I own a piece of it.
I think so. I think it all stems from this scene in the car when Treat is putting on his lipstick.
I think that may be right.
So I'm calling my lawyers, David. I'll have them contact him tomorrow.
And what about Dr. Alan Nutkowitz? What is he doing now? Because we actually had a full-fledged MD on the set at all times.
He was a neurosurgeon.
Yes.
He actually answered an ad that Michael and I had at UCLA looking for an intern. And I remember when he called Michael originally and left his callback number, Michael was scared to death that he had some horrible neurological disease. I was mighty relieved when he called, and turned out that Alan wanted to intern with us in the movie business.
Interesting where a lot of people have gone and what they're doing from this film.
Yep.
Right.
And we're still out there every day. So listen, everyone, thanks for watching this DVD, and thank you, Anchor Bay, for making it. And we'll see you at the sequel.
Yeah, and it was really fun revisiting this with you, Terry, Mark, and Michael.
Yeah, we're all
David
gonna,
as well, guys.
We're going to hopefully go out and now talk about old times at lunch if we can.
That sounds good.
So bye all. See you later.
So long.
Bye.
Can't see